On C, I'd like a secretarial note that this go to the CCO governance and monitoring team as per our meeting yesterday. There's resolutions made at committees that don't seem to filter through to the appropriate body. And we've just signed off the SOIs for all our 6 CCOs, but I would like to think that council means everybody in council, including the 6 council-controlled organisations. Can we just confirm that? That's what we mean?
We'll put a note in that we provided to the CCO monitoring and...
Fantastic. Great work. Thank you.
And Councillor Clow, I think you're the last on a speaking order.
Got a question, George. I have a question.
It's partly a question, but there's not a lot of emphasis on education about the issue, and whilst it is the Ministry of Health, probably has that mandate more than anything, but we're not really doing a lot on education. And I just want to know also, the way the world's going is tobacco's on the way out and marijuana's on the way in. They both smoke, they both create smoke. How are we able to educate on both things as a smoke? Because we're referring to cigarettes in here, and I think we are the highest consumers in the world after Jamaica of marijuana, and yeah, so I just want comments on that.
So I'd note, Councillor, that this is a piece of policy about a legal activity, so cigarette smoking is a legal activity and marijuana smoking is illegal. So we don't have a policy about activities that
So
are
if it
illegal.
moves to legality, then this would apply for that as well then, because that's what's happening obviously in the States. I think it's about 10 states out of 50 now, so
Okay.
in a whole lot of countries.
We would have to revisit that if and when marijuana might become legalised.
Councillor Brewer.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just want some comfort around C, because I see that the local boards in the report have suggested that the council should incorporate smoke-free clauses into lease agreements as a condition of funding grants. But this seems to take it a whole lot further, and I just wonder whether it's potentially going to spill out anyway when we do the revision and investigation work. To me, it looks like it's akin to implementing a living wage policy before doing a remuneration policy. And so I certainly want to see what comes out of it, because some cost-benefit analysis, because when we start putting those requirements on contractors, even if it is in the public domain, i.e. The man or woman who mows the council berms, their HR policy may have to change so they can no longer stand on that council berm or footpath and have a cigarette after they've done the job. And so there could be a cost to contractors to revising their expectations with their employees and their HR policies, which will come back to council as an additional cost of contract. And so jumping in and doing a blanket ban across all our contracts, leases, licences, events and grants might be an outcome of our revision and investigation, but pushing that now before that broader work is done, I think is premature.
Okay, I think around the table I detect that there's support for that, but we could take that separately, okay, when it comes to the vote. Thank you. Councillor Quacks.
Yeah, just a question. Before we go charging off into issues of implementing new bylaws and so forth, and I didn't ask this question, I probably should have asked it before, around Wanganui. What has been the evidence to show that the bylaw in Wanganui has been more successful than our existing smoke-free policy? Is there any evidence of that?
Through the chair. So the Wanganui bylaw went into effect a few years ago, and just recently in April they had a review of the bylaw because it hadn't been enforced for that time period since it was first introduced.
Excuse me, I didn't hear that.
So the Wanganui bylaw, it has been in place, but it hasn't been enforced for the years that it's been in place, and it was recently just reviewed in April 2016 because of the legal advice that they got internally that it might be invalid. So
So we could start this work and then find out that we're doing something that may also be legally invalid.
No, we go through a very...
But George, do you mind? I'm asking the staff here.
Pass through me, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'll
I'll ask the staff.
Can we make that number two?
In
Thank you,
answer to that's why it says investigate. So we have to be careful when we're adding additional regulation to an activity that's legal in New Zealand. We have to be careful about, depending on how the scope of the bylaw, what it covers, that it's not discriminatory. So that's why it says investigation of a smoke-free bylaw.
And I wonder if we shouldn't wait for Wanganui perhaps to do that work so that we could take some kind of lead from the work that they're doing. Perhaps just leave it for a little while before we rush into this, especially when it appears that our voluntary stuff or policies that we're already pursuing do appear to be working, although it appears to me that we need better communication, because it seems that in 2014 people were well aware, or more aware than they are now, of the smoke-free policy in those areas
Is
that
still
were
a
smoke-free.
question, Mr Chairman, or is it a speech? I've lost track.
Well, it's kind of speaking, I
asked
think
a
we're
question.
speaking to the motion.
All
He's
right,
speaking
so
to
it's
the
a
motion.
speech.
Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Four
And
minutes
I always appreciate Councillor Casey's
Come on, just carry on, we're going to be here all day.
Yeah, well, if I didn't get interrupted.
It's a speech, he's got 3.5 more minutes, Mr Chair.
Really should be
Councillor,
we don't.
are you finished, Councillor Quack?
So there is some work being done on getting better communication again, given the fact that 2014, the understanding or the, was better than it is now of our smoke-free policy?
Through the Chair, there's been quite a lot of discussion already this morning around the need for greater resourcing in order to enable that communication to be improved. And I think that the response to your question is covered in those previous discussions.
Yeah.
Just a question of clarification, Mr Chair?
No,
Just-
no,
oh,
I've got an order. Speaking
Okay,
of
it was just a question of
Councillor Walker.
Environmental
Yes,
committee on was going to
I've
limit
got
it
a-
in its scope, but
Got a question around C, and in particular this stipulation.
Sorry.
I've got a question around C,
Yeah.
and in particular around the stipulation as it goes to public places. Now, I would have thought that there were many instances where the council could be funding something. It might be occurring at a location that's not owned by council, but effectively it's a council event. So I would have thought that the bylaw would still apply. So it does concern me that we would limit ourselves by just the public domain. I don't think that's, I think the wording is suspect.
Well, if it's not a council event, it's not a
All
council
right,
event.
sorry.
It doesn't say that.
Mr Kimpton wants to speak
qualifier
and talk about it then. Mr Kimpton will talk about it. Thank
Mr
you.
Kimpton,
Mr Kimpton.
not Mrs.
We're gender diverse.
Listening into the conversation, I would like to recommend, if you can just show A1, if it's okay. I'd like to recommend that as we review the existing smoke-free policy, we also include in that an investigation of how we deal with this issue around council contracts, leases, licence and events. I think the issue that you might find yourself unwittingly going into is you're developing a policy framework, developing a bylaw framework, and then you're stipulating now before you understand the legal limits.
Yes,
Right,
yes, exactly.
So I think
Very good.
I'm not, my objective is not to water down your intent. My intention is to make sure that we have something that will stand up and take the test of time. So I would recommend we pull C, we modify it slightly.
Yes.
It will be an outcome of reviewing existing policy and its effectiveness and implementation. And under those conditions, you probably don't need to include where they occur in the public domain, because your ability to address that issue will be a result of the investigation that we undertake.
Absolutely.
So, well, okay, Can I ask Councillor Crum, whose motion it was or amendment it was?
Yeah,
what she-
no, I'm happy with that, insofar as we're covering our bases so that we don't have to fix up something later. Yeah.
Okay, so Mr Kimpton will get that sorted out. Councillor Walker, you had your question answered?
Yep.
Okay, one on. Councillor Penrose.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Chair. Without relitigating what I said earlier on in my statement, but I won't be supporting anything that's regulated because, in the regulatory framework, because we're unknown territory, unknown charted waters. And, you know, I think if I go back to when the government wanted us to ban open fires, 84,000 wood burners pre-2005, and open fires, 17,000 of them, you know, and we went down a path of education, tannalised timber, wetwood, and high sulphur coal, you know, the message is getting out there. But when it comes, I said in my earlier piece about Wanganui, you know, so yes, and you've heard the review, but nothing about how it's implemented. And I look at private land, and I look at council land, and I look at the DHBs. Can you tell me how Middlemore Hospital's doing it? Because it's not doing it, and it's been there for years. So, you know, I go back to the fact is that I have real concerns about, you know, people sitting around this table, sitting on tickets that say fiscal prudency, how we expend our money on Auckland Council. When it comes to the regulatory, it's going to cost dollars. So, people around this table, wake up.
Okay, thank you.
Can we put
Now-
1 and 2 separately?
Yeah.
when
Now,
you put
Councillor
them?
Cuba, do you have a
Thank
question or a matter?
Oh, well, the
Yeah.
clarification was around the statutory, if we're investigating, commencing a statutory process in that A2, isn't that rather costly and getting ahead of ourselves when we're investigating?
Okay, so...
It seems to be contradictory. We're saying investigating on one hand, but then we're going to commence a statutory process. So I'm not going to vote for that. So I'd like you to put 1 and 2 separately, please.
Okay, well, I just like
let's
to...
do that.
I just like to have my right of reply, stop anyone else speaking.
It'll be past your birthday at this rate.
Well, thank you, Councillor. And I do think that despite the reservations in relation to the cost and where the funding is going to come from, I don't think it's a bad thing to start the process in relation to the bylaw in tandem with the policy review, because if we don't, it'll be forever. And we haven't got a bylaw at the moment. I think that a bylaw, you know, it could be in the future that the government gives councils the right to issue infringement notices. That'll make it a much more simplistic process.
lifetime.
So, councillors, I'd ask you to support both of those. I think this has been a good debate. It's been there's been a lot of changes and a lot of information come to the table. So I'd ask you all to support it. We'll now put the
Division on A2, thanks.
division on A2. Yep. Okay, so I'll put...
Can you just finalise the form? Just stop. Mr Chairman, can I just ask you to stop?
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of work going on up there. Why don't we just wait for them to finish that so that everyone fully understands what they're voting on?
No, we'll do A1 first. A1 first. Okay, well, I'm going to put... can you bring A1 up on the screen, please, Eno? Okay, well, I'll put A1. I think that should be right with that. So I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. So now it's been asked for a division on A2, so we'll have a division on that. And I'll ask the Secretary to do that for us. Thank you.
Your Worship, the Mayor.
Aye.
Councillor Anai. Aye. Councillor Brewer.
No.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Councillor Cashmore.
No.
Councillor Clow.
Yes.
Councillor Cooper.
No.
Councillor Darby.
4.
Councillor Fletcher.
4.
Councillor Crum.
4.
Councillor Lee.
No.
Member McDonald?
For.
Councillor Penrose?
No.
Councillor Quacks?
No.
Councillor Stewart?
No.
Councillor Walker?
Yes.
Councillor Watson?
Yes.
Councillor Webster?
Yes.
Chair Wood?
Yes,
Carried 12-7.
so it's carried 12-7, clear that. Carried. And then we go to number 3, no, to B,